Well, all out in full force, they call it the final permutations and calculations as to who get what state strong party affiliation. The dominoes effect, how can that be seen in tomorrow's elections? Well, we're now being joined by in-house election consultants, of course, Captain Aliyu.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
And of course, we have Pastor Naji. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Well, you were one of those lucky ones who sat all through the results well, it seemed forever on that day to the extent that I felt so sorry for you.
Well, it was worth waiting. One of the sacrifices, and I think it was worth the waiting.
But anyway, how is it going now that we're looking at the governorship elections? For some, they never thought that this is a big one, but again, for so many close watchers, they have considered this as the grassroots election for the people because it is closest to them all.
On this set, there was speculation whether there will be some kind of lethargy among the electorate because of election fatigue, resulting from the presidential election. But I said, this one, at the final stage, would have gathered more momentum than the dynamics would be difficult to manage if we are not careful. And we are seeing the outburst of activities, so much expectations and so much agitations. So,
you think this is absolutely natural because, of course, we saw what happened 2 weeks ago is historic, and that definitely, some people are always afraid of what they call the domino effect, happening in almost all the states. And then you also find out that, some people are saying, no, it will not go down without a fight. How is that? How have you seen that play out in the last 2 weeks?
In the history of this country, there has never been an election that the voters have been so mobilized. So much awareness created. People have taken positions. Those who were sitting on the fence eventually entered the garden. So the situation is that people are highly geared and mobilized to vote for any of the candidates that they prefer. And the train has left the station so far. Okay, so it is too late perhaps for somebody to say, I'm going to convince this person to vote for that person or what. People had taken positions much earlier, irrespective of whatever may have happened in between. Okay? You see, in this country, people don't vote because they like a candidate per se or a party. They look at their interests. And most of these interests boil down to one thing. The voting population, I mean, not the elites. The elites are the fringes, and they constitute the minority in terms of the voting population.
But are you unbothered about the effect? I mean, the effects of the last election so far? We've seen a lot of movements between political parties. If you don't think that will have any effect on the voting?
You see, there are multiple factors that conduce to electoral victory. In this country, there's also that possibility of bandwagon effect. But bandwagon effect is not going to be domino in the sense that many people are now rational. You understand what I mean? You see, if you follow certain political party slogan or mantra, you have problem. But they started introducing a discriminant function, whereby, okay, this thing will stop here, and the other one will take off. Because I am very mindful because we can no longer, by the law, begin to say certain things. But if I had told you that I am Mr. A, you would expect that I would be A till the end of time. But you come middle of the road, you now tell me, okay, I want you now to also see that I'm also Mr. B.
Without swearing an affidavit.
This is an electoral season. It has nothing to do with the legalism. It is promises and an attempt to get the voters to go their way. You understand? So you will also find that there might be some difficulty because of the limited time to effectively canvass that new changed position. You understand what I mean? For certain character, so for certain cadre of the electorate. So we will not be able to sit down here to effectively predict what will happen. There are so many factors at play, some of which are outside statistical configuration. You know, that's the issue.
Well, let me come to you, Captain. We have been talking about security for a long time. There were fears that, you know, violence was going to mar the polls, but we came out of the first one pretty okay. People say we're not out of the woods yet, but how far have we gone, you know, in charting a course in this uncharted wood, as it would seem?
Well, talking about the woods, I think we've gone far enough to say we're almost out of the woods as far as the elections is concerned. And looking at it from the security perspective, we must accept that both sides of the electoral divide definitely will not give the other an easy run. Remember, we are on the home run now. And after the first round, the second round will see both sides girding up to put their best foot forward. Quote, best foot forward. We are seeing a lot of things, occurrences, clashes that are not actually giving us any positive signals, but I am confident that that will not mar the elections tomorrow, because if you look at the level of saber rattling that was done pre the presidential elections, you probably think by now the country should have been down and out. But our security agencies accommodated that, and what we are going to be seeing tomorrow is a replay of what we were able to achieve in the last 2 weeks. And I am confident that these pockets of skirmishes will be effectively contained. And I draw my confidence from one thing. Despite the saber rattling pre-presidential elections, we saw clearly that the average Nigerian went out and decisively cast his vote where he wanted it to be. He did it without actually subscribing to violence, without subscribing to intimidation. So there was this silent will that was almost overwhelming across the country of people to actually come and do what they want to do, how they want to do it legitimately. And that made the law enforcement's work easier. It took the pressure of security, it took pressure of anxiety. And now that the people have tasted the good of that, I think those that will want to infract that line of action will stand out tomorrow like sore thumbs.
Now, some people say that the tendency to have violent polls increases because we're talking about local elections and the competition is tough. In some cases, they said it was pretty easy to decide between two candidates. The factors that make local elections are a lot different. So you find that there's some areas where, even though in some places they pull together to vote a particular candidate, they will be at loggerheads because there is competition for the seat of the governor or even the local assembly elections there. How do you see that dynamics playing out? And what would you say? Would you say that the electoral umpire has a role to play in ensuring that this violence doesn't happen?
Yes, everybody has a role to play. And talking about local elections, I want also to mention that when you go lower down, you begin to enter sore areas like ethnicity. And from papers I've read from scholars in the past, there is a measure of effect ethnicity has on electoral behavior. But for me, the security man, what I look at is I decompose further to the individual. And what statement was the average citizen able to make in the last elections? What body language did we see from that average citizen? Don't forget, it's the same citizens that did the presidential that are coming out to do the local and the grassroots, as we want to call it. What was the body language of this average individual? Then you can actually escalate that to be, to the national average. We weren't seeing people who were giving body languages that they were giving to being lured into violence anymore.
Would you say that there were some lapses that were uncovered, say, in the 2 weeks ago election that you think should be looked into this week?
Yes, lapses indeed there were. And one of the key lapses, or challenges, I like to call them challenges, was communication. Communication is key. Without communication, you have nothing. If our law enforcement agencies across board can communicate, let me use the word gossip, share information. Don't take it to be an exclusively police, army, SSS matter. Send it out across. We are going to see better timings concerning response. We are also going to see less incidents, because if everybody is on the same page and they're all gossiping, if I want to call it that, we're going to see prompt responses and everybody acting in tandem.
Staying with the issue of communication, and let's look at security here. The police, the IG deployed about over 36,000 policemen, and we deployed 16 AIGs. Weighed that against INEC refusing to redeploy its resident electoral commissioners. Do you think this will work out, or don't you think if they had done that would have helped in securing some of these materials and ensuring the freer?
For INEC, I can understand why they will leave those same security, those same officials, the INEC officials, in the same place. Maybe by the time they do it a second time in the same place, they're going to improve, or maybe having done it in the same place in the past, as in the presidential elections, they're going to be seeing something I want to call native ability. They're now acclimatized, they know the nuances, they know the pitfalls, they know where to, so they're just going to do the same thing again successfully this time, because they've been able to pinpoint those flaws, and they're now prepared and primed to kind of anticipate them, prepared to handle them. For security operatives, it is key that you actually do some form of repositioning. You move people. One, security-wise, you change guards frequently. You cannot actually have a security team in a place for too long. The reason is simple. Given the nature of what we are doing, native ability now counts in favor of INEC, or may not be in favor of security operatives. The reason is simple. If you put them there too long and they get familiar with the people, you are going to risk a measure of compromise. But if you take them to a place where there isn't enough time to get even familiar before the whole show is done, they are most likely going to be straight up and cold. Just do the job and go home.